This old house was a crumbling underneath a painted sky, and the real thing is out there waiting, deep and wide as it is high. From this dry well, I can hear the river running by. Love is trying to make it easy, giving it away free, and we want to pay. Sitting on our fingertips, waiting on the edge of our lips, and we don't know what to say. Don't give up on us, don't give up on us now. Love. From where I stand and what I know, you should be a stranger at my door. Oh, and the part I play made me weary. I don't want to be there, no, not anymore. I never knew who it was I was playing it for. Love, just trying to make it easy, giving it away free, and we want to pay. Sitting on our fingertips, waiting on the edge of our lips, and we don't know what to say. I belong to you like you belong to me. Let it be the truth, solid as the earth, feet. My freedom is for you, yeah. Well, this moment might be perfect, coming out from under a painted sky. Love is trying to make it easy, giving it away free, and we want to pay. Sitting on our fingertips, waiting on the edge of our lips, and we don't know what to say. Don't give up on us, don't give up on us now. Don't give up on us, don't give up on us.
thank you. That was so beautiful. I think it was even more beautiful than first service, and that was fantastic. So thank you. Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Vanderputten, and I'm honored to be a member of the Board of Trustees. We are a community that seeks to be inclusive, welcoming whoever you may be, whatever your sexual identity, race, background, economic status, ability or disability, seen or unseen. Whether this is your first time or you've been coming here forever, know that you are welcome. To bring your whole self into this community, to connect, grow, and to serve. And there are lots of opportunities to serve. We're always looking for people to serve coffee, to greet people, to serve as an usher. If you're an extrovert, if you're an introvert, I actually am one, it's an easy way to say hello to people. You have something to do, so please do sign up for one of those. The folks organizing, I'm sure you have heard of the service auction on November 17th. The folks organizing this are looking for creative and interesting offerings to include in the catalog. This event has been a major fundraiser and a great way of connecting opportunities in the church. I encourage you to stop by their table to learn more. Consider to what you may be able to donate, from babysitting to vacation homes, and also to volunteer to help make this very important activity a success. Like each of you, I have been on a journey of understanding the extent of systemic racism in this country, how my actions or lack of actions have contributed to that, and how I might do better in the future. I am grateful to be a part of the Racial Justice Task Force. As a relatively new member to UUCA, I have been impressed by how much this community has been dedicated to social justice, and also been saddened by some of the mistakes that we have made in the past. I look forward to learning more about the history of fights against racism at UUCA and UUA in today's service. If you are here in the sanctuary, please join us for coffee afterwards, for good conversation and for good coffee. Thank you.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for that welcome. And band, thank you so much for beginning us with such beauty and joy in our hearts. I am Reverend Amanda Poppy. I'm honored to serve as the senior minister here at UUCA. My pronouns are she, her. And I'd like to introduce you to some of our worship team this morning. We have Amy Shields, who is serving as our worship associate. Her pronouns are she and her. You have just heard from some of our amazing band folks. Jen Heyman, our interim music directors, on the piano and vocals. We've got Topher on stick, Peter on drums. It's always a good week when Rochelle's visiting with us. And Celeste, who is one of our teens here in the congregation, singing together. And well, you will, as I have been, be transported, I believe. Cameron and Art are in the back running our sound and video so that we can be heard here and seen at home. A big hello to everybody who is watching from home. I want to invite folks now, because you are also part of the worship that we are creating. I want to invite you to turn toward each other and say hello, especially to someone that you have not met yet. Thank you so much, band. It is indeed a good day to be together. I just want to make double sure. Joan, are you back there? And did you clear the choir loft? We had a kiddo up in the choir loft. I just want to make sure everybody's been returned to their families. Joan, if you came in with a child and that child is not with you, they may be in the choir loft, which is not a great place to be. So I'm hoping, I can't see anybody up there right now. I think we're okay. And I think maybe Joan went down to check on things. We'll just keep an eye. Okay. It's live TV. We're all where we are. We're finding our way together. Our call to worship this morning comes from Unitarian Universalist minister Erica Hewitt. This piece is inspired by Unitarian Universalist minister Elizabeth Wynn in her chapter, Our Work for Social Justice, in the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide. To be a Unitarian Universalist means we'll never be done with the work of telling the truth about oppression, the work of resisting any laws, policies, or practices that deny anyone their humanity, the work of stubbornly seeking out the spark of the divine in each other, no matter what, the work of creating heaven on earth. To be a Unitarian Universalist also means we are not alone in this work. We are not alone because of our promises to love one another. We are not alone because we are companions on the journey. We grow ourselves into allies, helping one another get free. Because none of us is truly free until we are all free.
This morning, we light our candle of compassion in solidarity with those in our country and around the world who are experiencing loss, grief, violence, war, or loneliness. In particular, this Sunday, we hold the people of Palestine and Israel in our thoughts, and we fervently hope that the conflict in the region will be resolved peacefully and quickly. May we hold those who are suffering in our hearts as we work to create a more just and equitable future. Now I invite you to join in our chalice lighting with me. The words are printed in your order of service. We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
I invite you now, friends, to rise in body or in spirit and sing hymn number 326?
346.
346. God, so close. This is a hymn where the chorus in particular, you may not need to look at your hymnals. What? And instead be able to sing it out together, for surely this is one we sing to each other.
Song with me, that I might know
invite forward some of our younger, smaller people. You're welcome to bring your grown-up or come on your own. Come skipping, that's my favorite way. And you are welcome to sit on the chancel steps as you often do. You might also want to sit on the front row so you could see us, whatever's comfortable. And Amy, I think we need 4 helpers for our story this morning. So I'm wondering if I have 1, 2, 3, 4 helpers. Okay, and I promise there'll be so many more stories. So can you stand up, my 4 helpers? Thank you. Yes, my 4 helpers. Yep, there we go. And here we go. Can you hold that for me? And can you hold that for me? And then right over here, Amy has some other pictures to hold for you. Okay, so if I'm just gonna have you stand right here, kind of stand up and hold your, come on, right here. Turn around so everybody can see the picture and hold them up. Yeah, how about you 2 switch? Perfect. Yep, keep switching. There you go. Yeah, what do we think? Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, can we see our pictures? Are we ready for our story? What do we think? Okay. This story is adapted from a book called Desmond Gets Free by Matt Meyer. Desmond the mouse, hold it up really high, lived in the most beautiful meadow. I think it's a mouse, not a rat. We're gonna just say it's a mouse because I actually personally feel better about that. Okay. Desmond the mouse lived in the most beautiful meadow in all the land. Every morning, Desmond would spend the day playing in the meadow, and every evening, Desmond would go to sleep in the middle of that meadow under the beautiful starry sky.
One night, though, Desmond awoke and it was still dark outside. He tried to roll over to find a more comfortable spot, but something wasn't right. Desmond realized that his tail was stuck right to the ground. He felt behind him, and there was a huge boulder that seemed to have fallen in the middle of the meadow just on his tail.
Desmond pushed on the boulder and tugged on his tail, but it was no use. When he was out of breath and just about given up, he saw a giraffe nearby in the grass. Good news, he thought. "Oh, giraffe," Desmond cried, "could you please push the boulder a few inches in the other direction so that I could go free?"
The giraffe looked at Desmond and laughed, the way giraffes do. "Silly mouse," said the giraffe, "that's no boulder. That's an elephant that's fallen asleep in the middle of the meadow just on your tail."
"Well," said Desmond, "if you would just wake the elephant and ask him to roll over a few inches in the other direction, then I could go free."
"Well," replied the giraffe, "you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it best to remain neutral in times like this."
Desmond quietly replied, "Well, I do not appreciate your neutrality." The giraffe wandered off. You're all set, actually. And Desmond tried calling out to the elephant to wake him up. When he was out of breath and had just about given up, he saw another mouse wandering through the meadow.
"My name is Nelson."
"Nelson, this elephant has fallen asleep just on my tail in the middle of this meadow. I wonder if you might ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction so I could go free," Desmond asked.
"Of course," said Nelson. "I have an idea. Don't move."
"I won't," muttered Desmond.
A little while later, Nelson emerged through the tall grass, and he wasn't alone. Nelson had found 3 other mouse friends to help him, and each one of them had also brought another 3 friends.
Stand up. Lots of mice. Stand up if you'd like to be a mouse. The whole group of them ran over, like this, to the giant head of that elephant, one after another. They climbed up until the whole group of them had formed a long mouse ladder right up the side of that elephant.
At last, Nelson climbed up the shoulders of his mouse friends. "Excuse me," he called right into that elephant's ear. "It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of the meadow. I wonder if you might just roll over a few inches in the other direction so that he might go free."
The elephant made a low groan, kind of like this. See if you can do it with me. He's really sleepy. I'm comfortable just where I am. Go away.
So Nelson asked more of his mouse friends to climb up. One by one, they called out into that giant elephant ear on top of that giant elephant head.
Again, the elephant made a low groan. I'm comfortable just where I am. Go away.
Then Nelson had an idea. He whispered to the mice, and then all at once they yelled out together,
"Excuse us, it seems you've fallen asleep on our friend's tail in the middle of this meadow. Roll over a few inches in the other direction so he can go free." This time, all these voices together right next to the elephant's ear were too loud to ignore. "I was comfortable where I was, but I'll move over if you just agree to stop making such a racket," the elephant cried out.
And then the elephant rolled over just a few inches in the other direction. Nelson and the other mice helped each other climb back down, and Desmond was finally free.
Woohoo! This story comes to us based on a quote by someone else named Desmond, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. He said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." We are grateful for the wisdom of Archbishop Tutu and all of those who fight for justice, and for all of the mouse friends who helped Desmond to get free. And I am thankful for you. I will take your pictures, and we are going to sing you on your way to your classes. Thank you so much. Thank you for moving over just those few inches, elephant. No, we'll be careful.
Peace to you on your way. May you grow in love each day. Meeting new friends and opening your mind to the wonders of the world you will find. To the wonders of the world you will find.
As the stories and the songs we have sung begin to settle into our bones, I invite you to settle yourself into this space, into a time of centering. Take a breath if you would like. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or soften your gaze. Allow your heart to be where your body and your mind are. Open it even, perhaps, just a little. Spirit of life and love, God of many names and beyond our naming, we bring our hearts this morning. We bring our hearts and we seek to open them up to the stories of mice and elephants and giraffes, to the stories of people and institutions. We open our hearts to the stories we know already, the ones we learn new, the ones still untold. In this moment, in this place, with these people, may our hearts remain open so the stories can drop in and expand them bigger still. May it be so. Amen.
Fuente d'amor, ven hacia mí y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sol al volar, sube la mar hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arráigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirs of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, veil in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Each week, this congregation offers 70% of monies collected during our offering to an organization whose values resonate with our own. This month, we share our offering with Eco Action Arlington, which educates, advocates, and acts to create a sustainable community by improving our natural environment, encouraging environmentally friendly behaviors, ensuring environmental justice, and addressing the climate crisis. You can read more about Eco Action Arlington in your order of service. There are many ways to give. You can write a check to UUCA and write pledge or share the plate in the memo line and drop it in the plate. You can donate at uucava.org, or you can give via PayPal or text. Ushers, please come forward.
We don't even mind the rain or where we let of hardwood stains, 'cause we're collecting evidence of one remarkable storm. How wild it was to find it, to finally feel the climate, instead of always feeling dry and warm. Rain on us, Saint Honesty. Salvation is coming in the morning, and now what we need is a little rain on our face from your sweet Saint Honesty. So we won't sleep tonight while we brace against the wind. Oh, these hearts are where the makers will go where they take us, until we find ourselves shelter again. We won't settle for the silence. We won't drown in our tears. We'll say every single word, even if we think they'll hurt. Watch the rain wash away these tears. Rain on us, Saint Honesty. Salvation is coming in the morning, and now what we need is a little rain on our face from you, sweet Saint Honesty. Oh, we won't let go. We'll be drenched to the bone, baptized by truth. We'll reap what we sow till we reach a higher ground. With the rain pouring down, this is worth it to me, Saint Honesty. Rain, rain, oh. Salvation is coming in the morning. Wait patiently, aiming straight for it. Now what we need is a little rain on our face from you, sweet Saint Honesty.
I think I've lost track of the number of times I've gotten chills this morning from listening to the music. I invite you to join me in blessing our offering. We bless and receive these gifts, opening our hearts to true generosity. Let us be grateful when we give, be it time, talent, or treasure. Let us be grateful for our needs and the experience of vulnerability. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts to nurture this congregation. Thank you. Our reading this morning is A Ritual to Read to Each Other by William Stafford. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each other's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider, lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people stay awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals that we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The shadows around us are deep.
Amy, thank you for that beautiful poem, and thank you for the music this morning. I hope that you all have taken a look at or will read the music notes that Jen has prepared. They're an insert in your order of service. I mean, don't read it right now. I'm about to give the sermon, but later. Because they add a richness, they have the lyrics there and add a richness as well to the reasons for these choices, the context particularly of our prelude, our offering, and our closing music this morning. At the 2007 General Assembly, which is the national gathering of Unitarian Universalists from across the United States and Canada, Reverend William Sinkford, who was at the time the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, asked the gathered Unitarian Universalists, what does it mean to be a faithful Unitarian Universalist in our time? Reverend Sinkford went on to talk about the work that Unitarian Universalists had been doing individually and collectively to understand and to dismantle the systems of white supremacy, of racism within our movement and in our history and our nation's history as well. Work that they had been doing to understand their own heritage, their own ancestors, perhaps, particularly for white Unitarian Universalists, complicit in those systems of racism in our country. He asked the gathered body, with whom do we need to be reconciled? In response to President Sinkford's report, to his questions and engagement, and in response to work that the General Assembly had been doing for several years, a resolution was passed that delegates begin this work by encouraging their congregations and the Unitarian Universalist Association to research their own and the association's history, to uncover our links and complicity with the genocide of Native people, with slavery and the slave-based economy, and with all types of racial, ethnic, and cultural oppression, past and present, toward the goal of accountability through acknowledgement, apology, repair, and reconciliation, and that they report on their progress at GA, General Assembly 2008 and 2009. That 2007 General Assembly resolution was not the only one over the years that has called on Unitarian Universalists to account for our history individually and as a movement. How do we understand who we have been? The good, the bad, and the ugly. As UUCA's, as this church's Racial Justice Task Force asked us to explore in our own congregation during their timeline creation work over the last few weeks. What is the good, the bad, and the ugly in Unitarian Universalist national history? And there has been good. There has been good, especially in the aspirations, in the intentions. In many ways, I think about Unitarian Universalist history in similar ways to how I think about the history of the United States as I continue to understand it. I think about the dream, the hope that was held in the United States founding documents, even as it was intertwined right from the start in a country founded on the enslavement of a people based on skin color. And we know that the dream of Unitarian Universalism, remember that they started as two separate movements, and of the movement together after their merger in 1961, we know that that dream is one that should have held space and created space for racial justice all the way through. The dream of the inherent worth of every person, the idea that every person is born equal and worthy, that is Unitarianism. And the dream that we are all in this together, that if one of us is saved, that surely all of us must be saved. That's Universalism. Now, surely these two movements should have created dreams of racial justice and frankly should have fulfilled them. And there have been some wonderful moments, some moments of movement forward, often created by BIPOC Unitarian Universalists, Black, Indigenous people of color. Also, moments created or supported by white allies and accomplices within Unitarian Universalism, or by the movement as a whole. As I was preparing for this sermon, I found a Unitarian and Universalist racial diversity history timeline. It only goes up to 2001, so I need the last couple decades would be helpful, but it starts all the way back in 1784, and it starts with some good moments. When Benjamin Rush, a Universalist, was one of the founders of the Pennsylvania Society for the Abolition of Slavery. Or 1785, when Gloucester Dalton, an African American, was one of 85 signatories of the Charter of Compact of the Gloucester Universalist Society, one of the first people creating an integrated church within the United States. Fast forward, though, to 1850, when white Unitarian Senator John C. Calhoun pushed for and white Unitarian President Millard Fillmore signed the Fugitive Slave Act. We have the knowledge that 4 of the Secret Six who financed John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry were Unitarians. And that in 1889, not far from here in Norfolk, Virginia, Joseph Jordan became the first ordained African-American Universalist minister. But if we speed forward into the 20th century, in 1929, we find African-American Unitarian Ethelred Brown removed from fellowship, only reinstated 6 years later when the ACLU threatened to sue the American Unitarian Association. Or perhaps Alvin Neely Cannon, a Black Star King graduate who in 1945 was refused fellowship within Unitarian Universalist ministry because he was told there would be a lack of opportunities. Knowing our history is important. The parts of that history that we as a religious tradition are proud to tell, the bad parts. Originally, I was going to say the hard parts, but I actually think it's better to name them as the bad parts. The parts where the white power structure did not allow for or actively suppressed the flourishing of BIPOC and particularly Black Unitarians and Universalists. Growing up myself, Unitarian Universalist during the 1980s and 90s in upstate New York, I felt as though the story I heard was that Unitarian Universalists were almost always the good guys, the ones fighting for justice, and there are good guys among us. As I have understood our history more fully, I have understood that really we are like most other majority white, historically white progressive institutions, which means that we are often the moving too slow, caught by our own racism, well-intentioned but unable to escape white supremacy guys. Understanding our history can be a complicated work, even for those of us who train into religious professional roles within Unitarian Universalism. When I was in seminary, one of the key parts of Unitarian Universalist history that I was taught, this would have been the early 2000s, was what was then named the Black Empowerment Controversy. The Black Empowerment Controversy, as it was taught to me, centered around the 1969 General Assembly, that national gathering of Unitarian Universalists, when the Black Affairs Council brought to the gathered body an agenda of demands, including funding for Black-led organizations within and outside Unitarian Universalism. The debate on the floor was painful and harmful, and the majority of Black delegates and some white allies and accomplices separated from the body and moved over to Arlington Street Church across the street. A denominational schism was feared in that moment. Eventually, many of the delegates returned, and there was a vote so close you could count it in the single digits to approve the demands of the Black Affairs Council and to fund that work. However, in the remaining couple of years, the Unitarian Universalist Association failed to fully fund what they had promised. And as the story was taught in seminary to me, the majority of Black Unitarian Universalists departed the movement at that time. The Black Empowerment Controversy, it was called. More recently, I have come to hear that part of our history named the White Fragility Controversy. In preparing for this sermon, I read a fabulous article by Unitarian Universalist minister and historian Mark Morrison Reed. I recommend the whole article to you. I will not do it justice here, though I will share a little bit. It's found online, and I'll actually post a link on my Facebook page later this afternoon. And it's part of his book, Darkening the Doorways, Black Trailblazers and Missed Opportunities in Unitarian Universalism, which I recommend to you as well. Morrison Reed, in this article, names it neither the Black Empowerment Controversy nor the White Fragility Controversy, but instead names it simply as a tragedy. And he delivers more complexity and context to the story. After all, it didn't just start arising from nowhere at a General Assembly in 1969. The Black Affairs Council, in fact, came to be several years earlier, after Unitarian Universalism's first significant involvement in the civil rights movement, which came during and after the March on Selma. We talked a little bit about that history here last spring, as you may remember. After that work within civil rights within Unitarian Universalism and in the larger United States context in 1967, as there was rioting in cities around the country. Unitarian Universalists called in 67 a conference titled the Emergency Conference on the Unitarian Universalist Response to the Black Rebellion, at which 25% of the gathered attendees were Black Unitarian Universalists, even though at the time, Morrison Reed estimates they made up only about 1% of the denomination. So you can imagine this gathering, different than the denomination as a whole, bringing forward all of their hope and possibility for what the movement could be after what they had seen begin to be possible as Unitarian Universalists responded to the call in Selma. Emerging out of this emergency conference was the creation of the Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus, which then controlled that Black Affairs Council, which brought demands at the 1969 General Assembly. Morrison Reed describes the conversations at that emergency conference, which his mother actually attended, conversations within the Black Unitarian Universalist community at the time, which was not of one mind about how to proceed, of course, and describes also the larger picture of Unitarian Universalism institutionally then, an institution which had dramatically overspent and was at that time somewhat in debt. Morrison Reed names the white guilt that surrounded the votes and the way the white delegates got stuck in it. And of course, the deep sense of national tragedy and heartbreak held in the nation at that time among progressives and especially in the Black community after the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I have barely scratched the surface of all that Morrison Reed explores in this article as he untangles the layers of national history, denominational history, of politics and fiscal reality, and heartbreak and hope. He writes at the close of the article, Unitarian Universalists never stopped trying, reticently, clumsily, episodically. UUs continue to lurch along. Euro-Americans have come to see that it is their own racism and cultural illiteracy they are called to address. He goes on as he names the tragedy. It happened because of the bigotry and mistakes of earlier generations of religious liberals, because society was forcing change upon religious liberals, and change is difficult, because middle-class Black UUs needed to redirect their priorities, and this meant, for some, leaving. These were, he writes, good people torn by competing loyalties and conflicting values, some of which ran counter to their deepest traditions of polity and individualism. It happened because of institutional immaturity, fear, and hubris. It happened because it had to happen. So what has happened since then? Now, to me in seminary, this moment in 1969, it was taught as the moment when Unitarian Universalism failed to support its Black members, when it failed to support anti-racism work. But of course, history is never the moment. It's moments all along in time. It's choices each way as we go. And indeed, there have been many moments in Unitarian Universalist history, good, bad, and ugly, times when we have made choices that moved us forward as an institution, as a movement, and choices when we have moved backward. 10 years before that 2007 resolution that we began with was a resolution through almost unanimous vote at the 1997 General Assembly to create what became the Journey Toward Wholeness, a path, a curriculum, a series of ways to engage for congregations and districts to do anti-racism work. Coming out of some of that work were Jubilee 1 and 2 workshops. I suspect that some of you have taken Jubilee workshops in your day. I have. Perhaps, as for me and for many white people, that was an experience of confronting the racism that inevitably lived within us, thanks simply to being raised white in white America. Jubilee was also one of my earliest experiences with the practice of caucusing. Jubilee workshops were multiracial, always taught by one white and one BIPOC presenter, and white and BIPOC participants moved into separate spaces for some parts of the discussion, coming together to share afterward. Now, caucusing is a regular part of my experience of Unitarian Universalist work nationally, where we also sometimes caucus around other identities like cisgender people and trans and non-binary people, caucusing together, being able to speak to each other within their spaces, and then coming together afterward. This kind of caucusing and the power felt within spaces of people sharing core parts of your identity has also led to ongoing groups that have identity-based membership. Groups like DRUM, or Diverse Revolutionary UU Multicultural Ministries, and BLUE, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, a group that in some ways, particularly as it was funded by Unitarian Universalists around the country, was held as a possibility for repair after the funding failure of the Black Affairs Council. This congregation has engaged with the work of the Eighth Principle, founded originally by Paula Cole Jones, a longtime lay leader at our sibling congregation in Washington, D.C., All Souls. Eighth Principle work, which took our 7 principles or articulation of who we are and what we believed, and added an 8th focused specifically on anti-racism work and work to build beloved community. The 8th Principle work, unlike some of these other pieces, wasn't created by the UUA institutionally, but rather sprang up congregation by congregation, one to the other around the country. Eventually, Paula Cole Jones then became part of the Article 2 Commission, which is looking at all of the principles and creating new language that we will consider together at this coming June's General Assembly. Language we've been talking about for some time that includes anti-racist language and anti-oppressive language, holding love at the center of our faith. Over the years, the language we use even to talk about this work has changed, from racial justice to anti-racism, indicating a need to name the thing we are working against. And then the addition of conversation around white supremacy culture, existing in America just like the air we breathe. I remember, and perhaps so do you, the work done when that term first became present in our Unitarian Universalist conversations, work particularly with white folks to understand the difference between active white supremacists, people who believe and buy into white supremacy as a concept, and those of us who are caught in white supremacy culture, which could be any of us, the way that white supremacy culture shapes our institutions, even unintentionally. If you are interested in that work, I recommend to you Tema Okun's work on the characteristics of white supremacy culture and their antidotes. Now, there have been many more ways we have engaged over the years. Surely in the receiving line, you will tell me about the one I have missed, and I welcome it as we search and try to understand our history more deeply. Our white supremacy teach-ins, which disrupted worship and brought caucusing into Sunday morning. Workshops with young adults, with youth. challenges institutionally as the Unitarian Universalist Association faced a hiring controversy and crisis of leadership, leading eventually to the resignation of President Peter Morales and other leaders at the time in 2017. And then out of that, a reformation of hiring practices within the national institution and the creation of the Commission on Institutional Change, which created the Widening the Circle report. We've talked about that in this congregation before, a resource that studies and lays out the history of anti-racism work and of racial justice and injustice in our movement, inviting the reader to learn through shared experience. As we look at the history of Unitarian Universalism, we see crises and conflicts around experiences of racism. And how could we not in a historically white, majority white institution? What we do with those crises and with those conflicts, that's the question. How we individually, each one of us, and we as a congregation, as a movement, respond, and how we grow. Those are the pieces of the history still ours to write. Our work, as I see it, is to understand as fully as we can, with all the nuance of competing values and shared values, of cultural differences and cultural curiosity and cultural incompetence, all of which I have held at one point in my life and likely will again, to know the fullness of our own experience and that of the denomination. Some of you have been living this experience, perhaps as a white Unitarian Universalist engaging in this work, or as a BIPOC Unitarian Universalist either engaged in the work or simply existing in congregational and denominational life. Some of you may be learning the history for the first time. I hope that as we learn it, the same as when we learn United States history more fully, parts of it new to us, that we expand our ability to hold the both and. Both the dream of a beautiful possibility, the dream of a religion that understands each of us matters and all of us are in this together, and at the same time, often lived out by the same people, the reality of a movement caught in the experiences and structures of racism that all of America is caught in, and from which all of us must struggle to get free. Working against them, failing, and trying again. All of us together to get each other free. I invite you now to be all together in body and spirit and in voice as we sing. I don't even want to pretend to tell you what number hymn it is. 348. Thank you very much. Guide my feet.
Guide my feet.
invite you to join me in our chalice extinguishing. The words are in your order of service. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light and warmth it represents. These we carry with us, bringing our sparks of love to the world.
Friends, may we indeed search our hearts. May we learn our history. And as we do it, may we remember we are not alone.